Mr. Dave Rubin, how are you, sir?
Glenn, I'm doing well, although I got to tell you, you're giving me these inflation numbers. I'm trying to move a book today, man.
Yeah.
I need some good inflation numbers.
No, it's
I got
good.
Product to get out of the warehouse.
You are going to do really well. You just have to charge $85 per book. Dave does have a new book out. It's called Don't Burn This Country. In it, you say something kind of interesting, that this is this is your last chance to try to save liberals.
Oh, yeah, this is it, man. I mean, you know my evolution well, and your audience, yeah, I'm sure, is pretty familiar with it. I have tried for the last, say, 7 years to really wake up the remaining liberals and go, do the obvious stuff first. The obvious stuff is, okay, the left has gone bananas, the woke stuff, and 2 + 2 is 5, and boys are girls, and non-racism is racism, all the stuff that you've been talking about for years. Enough of the liberals get that, but at some point, the rubber meets the road. At some point, you have to make a choice. You have to see that fork in the road and say, okay, I'm going to have to separate from some of my old ideas, some of the old political leaders and political parties I've followed, and blaze a new trail. I think that's what I've tried to do in my life. And really, this book is saying, hey, we're past the point of talking. We're past the point of just explaining that there is something wrong with the left. Now we really have to build new things. We have to separate, in essence, from these people, build parallel economies, build new educational institutions, build new networks. I mean, literally everything, and I mean literally everything that we have to either rebuild or separate from these guys, because they're not going to stop. For all that we've warned, for all the work that all of us have done, they're still not stopping. Sure, we're waking up people, but the march is on. So it's time to blaze a new trail.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
Well, it means a lot of things. I mean, first off, you really have to think about your life in a different way. I tell a story in the book about an intern that I had about 2 years ago who was a great kid. He was really crushing it. And I said to him, he was going to school and then working for us part-time intern, and I pay all my interns, by the way. And I said to him, hey, listen, forget about school. You're killing it here. Let me hire you full time. We pay all your benefits. Join us, and you've got a bright future ahead of you. We'll take good care of you, and I know you'll make the show better. I know it'll work for me too. And he said, Dave, I think I want to stick with college. I get it. I'm flattered. Flash forward a year later, where now I live in Florida. As you know, I was living in Cali at the time. Mm-hmm. He called me about 3 months ago. And said, Dave, I've had enough. I don't like the Zoom schools. Nobody's learning anything here. We're being indoctrinated. My teachers are all activists. Does that offer still stand? And now he's got a full-time job. He just moved to Florida, and he's flourishing. And I use that as an example, meaning you don't have to go $150,000 into debt.
You don't.
When you are 21 years old to get a marginal job that most likely you didn't learn anything that got you the job in the first place. That's one example. I think we have to figure out ways to get off the big tech rails. It's why the Blaze is thriving, because you years ago saw the path of, I can't be so reliant on the big boys. I have to build my own thing. It's why I started Locals. I think there's all sorts of things. You need to know how to do a few things. One of the real crises we're having, I think right now, is that the millennials don't know how to do anything. They don't know how to change a tire. They don't know how to raise some chickens or start a garden. I mean, basic things. This stuff sort of sounds simple, but we've become so reliant on these big systems, and that everything will always be delivered to you. And if you just don't ask any questions, and if you're nice to the machine, it'll be nice back to you. But 2 years after, 15 days to slow the spread, I think we realize they're never going to stop. They're coming. And until you realize that it's your life and you better grab what you can while you can, they will just keep moving on everything.
Yeah, you talk about the difference between self-care and being self-reliant, and I can't tell you how important that is right now. All of us need to learn certain things. If our kids don't know how to read a map, you better teach them how to read a map and have maps that they can read. Also in the book, you write how to spot fake news. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, so, there's many types of fake news. We think of fake news traditionally as just sort of the made-up story, and believe me, there are plenty of those. And then I think another type of fake news that we think about is when the headline has almost nothing to do with the story. Those are sort of the two big ones that are somewhat obvious. But there's a couple other versions of fake news that I actually think are far more nefarious and more dangerous. I mean, one of them, the best example, because it's relative to what's going on right now, I mean, this Hunter Biden laptop story, which, right before the election was not allowed to be on Twitter, even though the New York Post is a totally reputable place of journalism that has existed as a newspaper for over 200 years. But you could not tweet about it. Not only could you not tweet about it, Glenn, as you know, you could not send the link to the story in your private messages on Twitter. That means they were monitoring people's private messages, the private messages of even journalists, quote unquote journalists that were sending the stories to each other. So a type of fake news is the things that they won't let you see. And I'm far more interested and worried about that than the fake stuff. We've all done pretty good work, and your audience is well aware of all the fake stuff. Very fine people on both sides, the Russia collusion hoax, Brett Kavanaugh's a serial rapist, the Covington kids are racist. Everyone gets that. Okay, the internet has allowed us to some degree to expose that. The bigger issue is the stuff that we can't quite see, we can't quite make sense of. 51 former intelligence officials tell us that the Hunter Biden laptop story is fake, and now the New York Times is even saying it's real, except that's a year and a half later.
And not only that, but the fake news continues. They say that it was real. However, the president's not implicated in this at all. So they've just moved the bar, and they're still saying kind of the same thing.
Well, that's the extraordinary part. And that's one way that the machine, and this is what I mean by these big systems, they always are a little bit in front of us, and we're always playing a little bit of catch-up, because you're totally right. So at first it was the story's completely a hoax. Then it sort of was like, okay, maybe it's true, but it doesn't really implicate Hunter in any way. Now it's sort of, okay, Hunter could be in some trouble, but it has nothing to do with Biden. And I suspect, Glenn, that as more and more info leaks from this thing and we figure out how Hunter got these jobs that he was completely unqualified for, Do you think that maybe, I'm not a rocket scientist or a biologist, but do you think that maybe it had something to do with the fact that his dad was vice president of the United States and maybe could influence policy? I mean, am I a crazy conspiracy theorist?
Oh, yeah, of course you are. Of course you are. Let me just quote the book and you expand. The collectivist left wants to strip you of the intrinsic and personal choices. You should want to stay at home. In fact, you'll get paid for it. You can watch porn and play video games all day, and when doing so, you're actually helping people.
Yeah, I mean, what a twisted thing they put on all of us over the last couple of years, that they got good people who worked really hard to build great businesses and restaurants. We all know someone in our own life, whether it was us personally or a neighbor or a friend or a cousin who had a business closed, someone who lost their job, the mom and pop stores. I think in California it was something like 70% of mom and pop stores closed during COVID, but for some reason the Target, the big box stores, they were allowed to stay open, while if you had a mom and pop shop that was selling virtually the same stuff, they had to close. These ridiculous arbitrary rules. And then of course, the way I relate it to collectivism is that at the same time, they're telling us we must stay home and you're going to kill grandma and just order in food. Well, first off, you're creating a class war, because only people that can afford to stay home will stay home. And then you've got these other people that have to wear masks to deliver your food. So we have a huge class war problem there. But also then the utter hypocrisy that they threw in our face when it was Black Lives Matter rallies. Suddenly Eric Garcetti, the mayor of Los Angeles, could go out without a mask and he could bow to those people. Or Lori Lightfoot in Chicago, she had her kids in masks. They still may have some degree of kids in masks in Chicago. But for Black Lives Matter, she could be out there without a mask. And even, Glenn, even in the last couple of days, I'm sure you guys covered it, the ridiculous press conference that chronic liar, Jen Psaki, gave the other day, where she was asked about Kamala Harris wearing masks indoors. And she says, well, she took it off for this because this was very important related to Ketanji Brown Jackson. This was a historical moment. They lie about everything while they take your rights and dignity away. And then they throw it in your face, and we just have to say enough is enough.
You moved to California, which is interesting to me because you talk about inclusiveness and you talk about the importance of being a good neighbor. Can you be a good neighbor in the wrong place?
Ooh, it was tough. It was really tough. I moved to Cali in 2013, and I had a really nice run there. I became professionally successful. My life was enriched in many, many ways. But these last couple years, and it really did start before COVID, but then COVID put it on steroids. The societal breakdown, because the individual is not separated from your politics and vice versa, meaning that if you're watching the news all day and you're completely fearful of everything and you're wearing masks outdoors and all of those things, you will start separating from your neighbors. So I would quite literally, LA, beautiful, 80 degrees every single day, not a cloud in the sky. I'd be walking my dog with no mask on, outdoors, fresh air, and neighbors would be, I kid you not, running the other way. The degree that everyone would go into the supermarkets and nobody would look at each other. You'd have a mask on, so that's already weird. You can't read facial cues. What do we think this is going to do to a generation of people? So I have to tell you, going from California to Florida, where I am now, and I've been here for about 3 months, I feel like I'm in a completely different country. And I don't mean that. I don't mean that to be. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. I genuinely feel like I am living in a place with a completely different outlook on life. I go to the store, people are smiling, they say hi, that you can feel energy here and excitement. Businesses are thriving. And that, as I said, it's not disconnected from politics. We have a governor here who said, hey, I don't know everything that's going on with COVID, but we're going to let people make decisions for themselves. And by the way, occasionally you see some people in masks here, and that's their choice. That's fine. But the government isn't dictating that everyone live under the boot. And it's a much more refreshing way to live. Glenn, I think I can't. It's like a weight off my chest. Since I'm here, I can breathe deeper.
I know. We're talking to Dave Rubin, the BlazeTV host, the Rubin Report, which you can find online or at BlazeTV. He's got a new book out today called "Don't Burn This Country: Surviving and Thriving in Our Woke Dystopia." In the book, you have a great thought experiment on Plato's Cave, and I want you to take us through that in 60 seconds. Can you hang? Dave Rubin's new book. I love this. In a time of madness, don't burn this country. It will give you the tools you need to think for yourself. I want you to walk into the bar and order a full-bodied opinion. I want you to get absolutely wasted on facts until 3 a.m. And then when you're just about ready to pass out, I want you to get another glass of reality and chug it. I love that, Dave.
Glenn, I know you don't drink anymore, but
no, I can relate.
There's something there.
Yeah,
there's something there.
There is. All right, so take us to Plato's Cave 2022. First, explain for people who don't know what Plato's Cave is.
Yeah, the basic idea of Plato's Cave and why I use it as an example in this book is that in the cave, if you live in this cave, as Plato described it in this conversation that he was having when he originally wrote it, if you live in this cave, your perception, and if you only live in a cave, and it encapsulates everything that you know, what you can see around you in the immediate vicinity of you, your perception of reality will be extremely different than what actual reality is. And somehow, through social media, through lockdowns, through closing businesses, social distancing, eliminating the ways that humans have always communicated, in some ways we're all sort of caught in our own cave right now. Mm-hmm. And those of us that are trying to have difficult conversations, that are trying to build some bridges instead of burning everything down, I think the challenge for us is to get out of our cave. We can, Glenn, you guys like us, we can analyze the news and we can try to translate it in a sensible way to our audiences, and hopefully they can incorporate some of that in their lives and figure out what's real. But it's on everyone to do that to whatever degree you can, because, especially when you add in the big tech element of this and algorithmically charged stuff where we do not know how news is being catered to us and what they're sending us, the feeds, what they're doing to our dopamine related to likes and clicks and retweets and all these things. In essence, we're all being pushed back into the cave where only our sort of preconceived notions are the things that are going to matter. And we really all have to step out of that cave. And by the way, when I wrote this, I'm talking to myself as well. None of us are perfect.
Right. And you say, imagine a civil war breaks out. Two groups, one who wants to conserve, one who wants to destroy.
Look, this was not a line that I wanted to write, and I've thought a lot about this. And, there is a little bit of you can feel a grumbling right now of a movement, of a sort of separation movement between the red and blue states. And the problem is that, look, we are called the United States of America. We are supposed to be individual states. This is what the federalist system is about, of course. And then we are supposed to be united in some form of commonality. Unfortunately, because the Democrat Party has gone so far off the deep end and taken the blue states with it, as I said before, if you live in Florida or California, in effect, you live in different countries. We have to figure out how to arbitrage this situation. My suspicion is that the red states are going to continue to flourish and the blue states are going to continue to crumble. Now, the problem with that inherently is that the red states kind of are going to say, okay, hey, we're doing it right, we're out of here. But the blue states are going to say, no, we still want more. We want more of your tax money. We want more of your production, whatever value you guys bring. I think the red states, generally speaking, I'm not talking about a true secession movement or something like that, but I think sort of an ideological, hey, this is where I live and these are the things I care about. The blue states won't let that alone. So I think This is going to be something that comes up more and more. But the irony, of course, is that in many ways, this is the way the country was set up to be. The federal government is not supposed to have nearly as much power as it does.
Dave, I'm so glad you're on our side. It's been...
Glenn, I'm glad to be on the same side with you. And let me tell you something, my friend, because I know you're not going to toot your own horn. We're burning up the charts with this book right now, but I can't get ahead of the Great Reset on any category because you're still killing it, man. You're crushing it all over the place. The book's been out for 2 months.
Thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate it. The name of the book is Don't Burn This Country. Make sure you grab it now wherever books are sold. Dave is a remarkable guy, started 7 years ago, questioning his own beliefs. And he is, I think next year, he might get to a point where it's like, Genghis Khan didn't go far enough. I mean, he is really becoming a conservative warrior. Dave Rubin, you can find his show at BlazeTV.